Belgioioso Cheese is a family-owned and operated company specializing in artisan Italian cheesemaking. Using only natural ingredients and fresh local Wisconsin milk, master cheesemakers handcraft the full line of exceptional cheeses, guided by a commitment to quality and a respect for tradition. Ask your distributor about Belgioioso's award-winning fresh mozzarella, burrata, ricotta, mascarpone, American Grana, and Parmesan. At Belgioioso, every cheese is a specialty.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Extra Serving, a podcast from Nation's Restaurant News. I am Sam Oches, editor-in-chief of NRN. This week, we are talking about CAVA's impressive results, Wonder's acquisition of Grubhub, and we'll get into some full-service companies that may have some optimism, believe it or not. And I'm going to be chatting about all of these things and more with my colleague, Alicia Kelso. Alicia, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Alicia, you and I both were on the road this week. You were in one part of the country. I was in another part of the country. And I would argue that we were in vastly different events. Mm-hmm. I was at Restaurant Finance and Development Conference in Las Vegas, a wonderful event for the finance investment side of things. And you were at a Women's Food Service Forum workshop in Atlanta. Tell me, Alicia, how that was for you.
Yeah, they have these leadership development workshops. They had 8 this year. This was the one in Atlanta. I was at Coca-Cola's headquarters. I've never been there. What a space. And this was the biggest one of the 8. And I think they had over 300 people in person and another 100 and so online. So just incredible programming, inspiring, sort of very much a development workshop, self-reflection. You know, we get so wrapped up in this day-to-day. It's been a heavy news cycle the past couple of weeks. We've had a ton of conferences. And, you know, Krista Gibson, the WFF CMO, got on stage and said, this isn't going to be like that. We're not going to talk about P&Ls or off-premise and on-premise. We're going to talk about you, the people fueling this industry. And I think I just kind of needed that.
Yeah.
I mean, I came back. The speakers were incredible. The content was incredible. And I got on my plane last night and I wanted to run through a wall. So that's always good. So here I am ready to run through a wall. So tell me what you need, boss.
Oh, great. How do I properly put this to use? Let's see. I need 10 stories from you today, Alicia.
I got it. You got it.
Drop off this podcast right now.
I don't need to. I'll get it done.
Well, and that's great. And I think that's such an important thing, right? Which is like, because again, I was at a vastly different event, which I'll talk about in a second, but like just that fact that so many of these conferences, and there are a lot, and that was mentioned many, many times when I was in Vegas. So many of them are so focused on the professional and we forget about the personal. Now, of course, what we do for a living, that is a professional thing, right? But if you're not taking care of the personal, how can you focus on the professional? And so whatever the personal development is that you want, need, seek, desire, there is likely something in this industry for you to get that outlet. And the WFF, great partners of ours, Women's Food Service Forum, we're very proud to partner with them and elevate that organization. If you are a woman in the industry, or of course, if you are a man in the industry who wants to ally in this mission, as I like to say that I am, you know, please look into Women's Food Service Forum and the events they have. Their big leadership conference is in February. Highly recommend that. Alicia will definitely be there. I hopefully am going to try to get there as well. But they have these workshops, and these have wrapped now, I think, for the year, but you will have a chance, I'm sure, next year to do more of those workshops. So definitely a plug for the Women's Food Service Forum. Alicia, I have to ask before I talk about where I was, did you go to the gift shop at Coca-Cola's headquarters?
No.
What?
You didn't tell me to.
It was so close to where you are based on the pictures I saw. You just had to go down one stairway.
Well, nobody told me. That's on you. That's not on me. That's on you. That's not on me.
The most phenomenal gift shop where I always spend too much money for my kids. My kids have so much Coke swag because it's just like,
yeah, I bet. Don't tell my kid I missed it.
Yeah. Next time. Okay. So I was in Vegas for RFDC, Restaurant Finance and Development Conference. And it is kind of, it's funny how different, I'm sure, the tone was, of course, whereas WFF, very personal development, RFDC, really all, money, growth, investment, very brass tacks, very get in the weeds on how to raise capital for growth. What does growth look like? By the way, all really good content, all very necessary, just a different mood. And, if I could play cynic for just 1 second, probably 90% male, I would guess. I don't know the official numbers. So again, vastly different setting than what you were in. And a good deal of optimism in the room. So you know what, whatever you think about how the last few weeks have transpired, from an economic standpoint, that room is very, very optimistic about, as taxes theoretically probably will be rolled back as regulations are rolled back. The regulatory environment becomes more pro-business. The rate is going to presumably continue to come down, inflation as well. These investors are ready to invest. The capital markets look very favorable in 2025. Now, of course, it's not going to be all boomtown. There was plenty of talk, about some of the things that continue to be challenges. There is the whole labor conversation you and I talked about last week, Alicia. That's not lost on the folks who I connected with in Vegas. But hopefully the restaurant industry can properly tap into the opportunity that will come with the, with the softening or with the improving economy, while also ensuring that it takes care of its employees, as we talked about last week. Just need to focus on making sure your employees are well taken care of, no matter what happens. But lots of great connections at RFDC. We'll be eager to go back to that event next year. I will say here, I've told everybody in the last 2 days, we were just talking about it before I hit record. I do not like Vegas. I'm sorry, everybody. I'm sorry. I know that's not a popular opinion in this country. I don't like Las Vegas.
You didn't get the right food and you didn't go to the right concert.
I could see the Sphere from my hotel room. Mm-hmm. I did not go to the Sphere. I hope I will eventually go. And one of these days, perhaps I'll go for fun and not for work. Perhaps my wife will come with me. We'll go see the sights. It's not really my cup of tea. Our boss, Joe Donnelly, asked me, he said he was surprised by that. He's like, you seem the type that you'd be a lot of fun in Vegas. And I said, here's the thing. I'm more Nashville than Vegas. I'm more honky tonk than casino. So yes, I like to have a good time. Don't get me wrong. But the good time offered by Vegas, not up my alley. I'm sorry. It's just how I am.
It's okay, Sam. Everybody's different.
Thanks, Alicia. Thank you. Our therapy session continues into the recorded podcast. All right, let's get to it. Let's talk about the industry. This week's a variety of results. I would say more optimism this week, certainly from the earnings side of things too. We were pretty doom and gloom last week and the week before that, but this week, some positivity, and we have to start with CAVA. CAVA, you know what? Look, we could have predicted this. I think probably it still surpassed any expectation of how well it would do. CAVA was definitely a topic of conversation at RFDC. It is now the model of emerging brand success stories. It has become what Chipotle used to be. Chipotle now a prime brand, kind of in its prime. CAVA still on the way up and taking the mantle of what Chipotle once had. CAVA, let me just read some of these numbers really quick. Same-store sales increase of 18.1%. Traffic increase of 12.9%. Their AUV is up to 2.8 million. Their profit margin's up to 25.6%. They added 11 restaurants. They're now up to 17. Did I say 11? No, it is 11. They are up to 352 restaurants total. Alicia, is there anything bad to say about CAVA?
No.
So anyway, on to the next story.
No. Firing on all cylinders, like you said. I think what stood out to me when I was covering this call is that last year they had impressive numbers because they had that really strong IPO tailwind. They went public last year, and that tends to come with some pretty impressive numbers out of the gate because people are like, who's this? What is this? Let's go try it. This to have a same store sales increase of over 18% on top of that IPO halo is staggering, not to mention, almost 13% growth in traffic and the AUVs. So obviously they're growing, but so are their AUVs, which is what we want, right? In this industry. So their brand awareness grew 8% on the quarter. So they're still really leveraging that IPO halo. They're still really, and with more growth, of course, comes more awareness. What was really interesting to me about this company's call is their strength in sales and traffic is really broad-based. We tend to think of some of these fast casual concepts as skewing higher income. And for CAVA, they their numbers came from every single income demographic. They skew a little bit younger because their social media presence is really strong, but really all age demographics, all geographies, urban and suburban, were turning in strong numbers. Their new unit openings as they go into new markets. For example, they just went into Chicago and they expect more Midwest growth in the coming months. Those are exceeding expectations. So, and also another really interesting takeaway from the call was they're working on several initiatives right now that I can't see, will slow down this momentum. For example, they've got a new labor deployment model that is helping some of their lower performing stores, which there obviously aren't very many. A new kitchen display system, which will, obviously create more efficient operations. Their loyalty program is brand spanking new. They really push the message of how they're a category of one, which pretty much they are. And we've seen that translate to success elsewhere, notably with Chipotle, with Wingstop, this category of one, Raising Cane's. All of those types of brands really tout that category of one. And CAVA's doing the same thing with Mediterranean cuisine, which has, a healthy halo. The final point that I think is super interesting here that I think has implications for a broader conversation that I'm sort of marinating on right now is the hospitality angle. And Brett Schulman the CEO threw out a statistic I can't remember off the top of my head because I don't retain information anymore. But it was about how we look at screens like X amount percent more than we have, just 2 years ago. We're less face to face, and CAVA wants to change that conversation, and they're doing so by making, their stores warmer, more inviting through an effort it calls Project Soul. He insists that consumers are coming in and looking for warm, welcoming places to dine, and really trying to push that hospitality angle. The Mediterranean hospitality is what he called it, so that they kind of differentiate themselves in a space that he insists has become too transactional. I don't disagree with him. And we're starting to see this conversation pick up a little bit, for example, in Starbucks, going back to trying to be a third place environment because they got away from that in the past several years and also became too transactional, as new CEO Brian Niccol has said. We saw Subway come out with a Subway Fresh 2.0 design just this week that is also warm, more hospitable intentionally to try and promote, a better experience for dine-in Subway, a better experience for dine-in customers. So this is a really new and ground floor conversation. Did the pendulum swing too hard, too fast toward to go only digital, digital transactional type? I think that's what we're kind of seeing. And now we might see some correction here.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And not to get too much off on a tangent here, but I'm fascinated by the implications in general about where we are as a society. I'm probably thinking about this more than the average person, but Alicia, I've told you I'm reading this book that every parent appears to be reading right now.
I got it last week because of your recommendation and started reading it on the plane. So thank you.
And I highly recommend. It's called The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. He's an NYU professor and sociologist, I believe. He has lots of great data and studies to basically demonstrate how, starting with Gen Z, the excess screen use for children leads to higher rates of anxiety and depression. I won't go into all of that. I just will say I recommend that book. However, where I feel like it's interesting is then when I was in Vegas, I had a conversation with a couple industry friends, and they were talking about how they were getting more into, meditation and more into sort of taking care of their mental health. And I've certainly been thinking, I've started to sort of put my phone away as I'm with my kids, that they don't see me on my screen all the time. And so personally, I've been really thinking a lot about how much we are connected to these screens, how much I don't want my children to be like that. And I'm just starting to get a lot of these, when the universe starts to kind of talk to you, there's a lot of buzz out there about people wanting something, real. They want something. I think we're so enmeshed into our devices that, to your point, the pendulum is going to swing back to where it's why we have vinyl records. It's why we want real books. We want often something real. Now that pendulum will swing back. I'm sure it's going to go back and forth. This technology is not going away.
Right.
We can't put the genie back in the bottle, but I'm really glad you brought up that point about hospitality, because I do suspect right now in this day and age, as more and more people recognize, hey, I don't want to be addicted to this screen as much as I seem to be, that restaurants can really fill that. Hey, I'm going to go sit in a place with friends and actually work on human relationships. Yeah. Restaurants can capitalize, but by the way, they don't have to unplug their digital opportunity, right? I mean, that doesn't come at the expense of another channel. This is really just pure opportunity if you make the proper investments, I think, in the four walls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you recall, I think you moderated the panel at the Bluestone CEO that brought this very point up. We've got a mental health problem in this country. We've seen the numbers, and we've started to see restaurant companies start adopting mental wellness benefits more, in their overall benefits package. Denny's has this really cool, mental health summit that it started to run, and with these conversations, how can restaurants play a role in that? They're not going to solve the problem,
right?
But they have a very unique, this industry has a very unique opportunity to play a part in some type of part in making this a little bit better, both because it offers that third space social outlet and because it's such a huge employer.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And look, food at the end of the day, food itself will never be digital. It is still something very tangible that you cannot take to the digital sphere. So we at least have that going for us. Okay, well, speaking of digital, if we want to talk about the potential for the digital and, when you are addicted to your screen, big news this week, Wonder, which is a startup company. I don't know if you call it startup anymore. Obviously, it's pretty substantial at this point. Wonder, which you might call a digital food hall, basically a delivery company, but specifically offering chef-designed meals for delivery. So think of like a third-party delivery service, but not for the national brands, more just for actually crafted high-quality food. Well, now they can be considered a third-party delivery company because they acquired Grubhub, a deal that will close in the first quarter of 2025. I believe something like $650 million deal here. Grubhub, I didn't know this. Apparently, I'm not paying attention. Grubhub had acquired Blue Apron last year. Wonder had acquired Blue Apron last year. Now they're acquiring Grubhub. So what we see from this company is they're going to have a full suite of products available for delivery. They're going to have meal kits. They're going to have branded prepared food, and they're going to have proprietary branded food through those chefs that they've recruited to their platform, which includes many celebrity chefs. So this is a big deal. Alicia, what do you make of this and the potential it has for the industry?
And they're curating. Grubhub has 375,000 restaurants on its platform, so they're also curating some of Grubhub. So they're just making their platform more robust in their Wonder's quest to become, quote, the super app for mealtime. And this is their position. I think everybody, we are talking in our newsroom Slack, how every single person on the editorial team has covered Wonder in some capacity in the past 2 years, because they've made a lot of, changes and have strategized new things to ultimately become that super app for mealtime. You can't count Mark Lure out. He's
Right.
a serial entrepreneur, diapers.com, jet.com, former Walmart executive. I met him at Prosper last year, and he's just really, really quite brilliant. So this is a really intriguing acquisition. What stood out to me about the acquisition, though, aside from wonder, was that $650 million price tag for Grubhub. Just Eat Takeaway, which is a European company, paid $7.3 billion with a B for Grubhub in 2021. And I'm no math person. You pay me to write, not to do math. But I think that's about a 90% valuation drop. So
Yeah.
Yikes. They just didn't keep up with their competitors. They didn't diversify like DoorDash or Uber Eats. That's a whole different conversation here.
Well, the market share was like single digit percentage, like 6% or something like that for Grubhub.
Yes. At a time when third party delivery was coming back down to earth from the pandemic highs, and the DoorDashes and Uber Eats of the world were, diversifying. But anyway, they still have a robust infrastructure. I think what's interesting to me, and obviously with 375,000 restaurants, they still have a huge platform, right? That's nothing to sneeze at. Wonder has its own digital and logistics in place, and they use their own drivers. So what I think this partnership is going to do is just expand that and scale that much more quickly. Wonder is concentrated mostly in the Northeast right now. I think they're trying to get to 90 locations next year. They're at about 30 now, and they want to scale, congruously. And I think this will help them do that with a little bit of speed. It should bolster that speed, and it should bolster the experience because it's a bigger network that they're latching onto and rolling into their own platforms. So I don't know what's going to become of this. I don't think it's, I think it's going to just help, again, Wonder's cause and be that super app. Like you mentioned, now they've got all of these different things from people to choose from. And you can just look at this app and be like, oh, you know what? Tonight I want a meal kit, or I want this curated restaurant from Grubhub, or I want this celebrity, meal from Wonder's proprietary platform. Wonder has $1.7 billion in private funding behind it too. Amazing. So obviously there's a lot of confidence in what they're doing.
For sure. I mean, look, I've seen enough of these things fail to be overly confident on this. However, I would say anything that makes food more convenient and accessible to the customer in general is safe to bet on. Now, and I say that thinking specifically of the virtual concepts that we were so convinced would change the industry a couple of years ago, and in short order really just faded from memory. Now, I'm not here to knock it necessarily for everybody. It's sort of settled into a niche, and that's totally fine. But when there were people predicting that it would be a $1 trillion industry, let's wait and see. But what Wonder's doing, I think genuinely, there's reason to be confident in this, especially because I have to imagine this could grow to include someday maybe more retail, right? Like if they want to be the one-stop shop, they could continue to gobble up some of those other categories in retail and make it genuinely a place where I can get a meal. I can get a meal for tomorrow. I can get my diapers for my baby. It could get to that at some point.
Well, and they did partner with Walmart recently too. So they've got a handful of locations inside Walmart to your point.
Yep.
It just seems like their tentacles are they're trying to get them as far and reaching it as possible. And the Walmart thing is interesting because obviously he's a former executive there, but he's basically like, oh, people are going to be out shopping. And the idea is just to get them to stop by and grab some food on the way out. Right. I do that. You do that. We do that. We're people. We do that. So,
right.
Just making it really, just making it thoughtless and easy and seamless. And so I think that's what we're doing here.
For sure. Okay. I'm going to hit enter on my keyboard so I can invite our colleague to join us for the extra serving. We're going to talk about now some full service companies that have some reason to be optimistic. We've been a little bit doom and gloom on full service lately, but it is not all that depressing. And so as soon as she pops up, I am going to enthusiastically greet. I should have pressed the button earlier.
Who's our guest?
Oh, it's a surprise to you. Oh, I'm going to do that from now on. I'm going to make it a surprise for you every single time. You could probably
make me guess, and then if I'm wrong.
Well, you've got 2 to guess from since I said she. So that's a safe bet. I even gave her the link this time. So it's not like she's rooting around looking for that link. And I told her about what time we were going to do this. So, there she is. Managing editor Leigh Anne Zinsmeister, welcome to Extra Serving.
Thanks. Should I ask what that was about, or are we good?
Well,
Sam didn't tell me who you were.
I didn't tell Alicia who was joining us. So
some suspense.
But I did say she, and I'm like, well, you could probably guess. There's only 2 guesses here. So anyway, Leigh Anne, we've been more optimistic than the past couple of weeks, I would say. We've talked about some success stories in the restaurant industry, and we're going to keep that theme going because there's a few full-service restaurants who do have reason to be optimistic. We're going to specifically talk about Red Lobster, Applebee's, and Cracker Barrel. Let's start with Cracker Barrel because I think their quarter, which was fiscal 2025 first quarter for them, for their fiscal year, I think impressive results for a company that we have not seen impressive results from for a while. Cracker Barrel reported 2.9% same-store sales growth and traffic outpacing their full-service competitors. Leigh Anne, what should we make about Cracker Barrel coming back? Is it working?
Well, first, I want to acknowledge the hilarity of you inviting me on and asking me to speak optimistically about anything.
I told you could do it with an eye roll.
You did clarify that I was welcome to come in and just bring you all down a notch. But I think I might be on board. So Cracker Barrel, yes, this is actually 2 quarters in a row of positive same-store sales for a brand that was doing, dare I say, worse than the average casual dining chain there for a while. CEO Julie Masino has been in for a bit now. I don't remember exactly when she came in, but maybe about a year ago. Time isn't real.
A little bit more, I think.
Okay. So
maybe even 2 years at this point.
Amazing. Well, she came in. She had big plans for the brand. I would say people, and by people I mean me, were skeptical of the way she seemed to want to come in and modernize what is not only a legacy brand, but a brand that kind of relies on the nostalgia of like a classic American road trip. But evidence seems to show that it might be working. And anecdotally, I saw someone random on TikTok yesterday saying that they saw an influencer go to a Cracker Barrel and now they wanted to go to a Cracker Barrel. While like that's like a sample size of 1 is not a real thing, but I do always take note when restaurant things come across my personal feeds because I do try to keep them very separate. So if I'm scrolling TikTok for personal reasons and I come across someone saying they want to go to Cracker Barrel, I am like, ooh, Cracker Barrel, maybe back. Also, great news for the chain as they've been dealing with a particular pesky activist investor for the past few weeks. So this might be an opportunity to hold him off. They've got a shareholder vote next week, I think. So this is good timing, I would say. They can hopefully convince the shareholders to vote the way they want them to. And things are looking good for Cracker Barrel. I'll also say my sister has been to Cracker Barrel twice in the last couple of weeks. That she told me about. Sample size of 2. Sample size of 2. The younger millennials, elder Gen Zs are going to Cracker Barrel, which I think was really the point of that plan. Totally. So great job, Cracker Barrel.
So two things. First off, I was in the same room as said activist investor this week and did not realize it until after the fact. Super bummed because totally want to meet that guy.
Oh yeah.
Of course, talking about Sardar Biglari, fascinating person.
Yes.
But wasn't. Yeah. Unfortunately, the next day they were like, "Hey, did you see Sardar?" I'm like, "What? No, I would have gone up to him." Anyway, neither here nor there. But the second thing is, of course, Sardar is a minority stakeholder. He has about, I think, 9%. Has tried to take over this company. He wants to replicate what he did at Steak and Shake. which is to turn the brand around. If you're not watching this, but just listening to this, I gave that quotation marks because debatable on how that worked for Stage Shake. However, he has been highly skeptical of this modernization plan. And there's a little bit, I think now Cracker Barrel has a little bit to crow about that. Hey, maybe it is working, Leigh Anne, to your point, modernizing it, bringing in influencers, whether intentional or not. I mean, even just getting the attention of the influencers. We saw how that worked for Chili's. Right. Chili's, influencers, both earned and unearned, it exploded and was hugely beneficial. But what's so interesting about Cracker Barrel, you make that point. It's like this sort of slice of Americana. It's this down home kind of company. It makes me think a little bit of Texas Roadhouse. Everything kind of makes me think of Texas Roadhouse right now because I can't stop talking about that company. That's for another day. But they're in smaller communities across the country. They really thrive in smaller communities in the middle of the country. They've been around forever. But it's an interesting challenge to protect that Americana status while also modernizing, because if you go whole into digital in ways that, like, for example, Chili's has done, you could spurn some of those people who have been loyalists because it's just not what the brand is about. However, as we've talked about, you can also hook some of those younger consumers, which are obviously vital to the future of the brand. Alicia, I imagine you have thoughts about Cracker Barrel.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot. There's a lot on the line here. They're spending I think $700 million for this modernization, and obviously this preliminary result that they released Thursday was intentional ahead of that vote next week. But I think it kind of goes to the bigger conversation that we're having right now is the state of casual dining in general. And it has been exceptionally bifurcated this year. You see the Texas Roadhouses and the Chili's just absolutely crushing it. And then you've got the Applebees and Red Robins and Cracker Barrels just working overtime to sort of get back on track, that are just kind of in purgatory right now. And then you've got, of course, the bankruptcy class of 2024, which includes several casual dining chains, including Red Lobster and most recently TGI Fridays. So take the bankruptcy class out of this conversation. And I really like the progress that we're seeing in sort of those middle holding pattern type companies like Cracker Barrel, like Red Robin, like Applebee's. It seems like a lot of these companies had turnaround plans. Red Robin, like Cracker Barrel, had a big turnaround plan in place. That turnaround plan went to, just was put on pause because everybody knows this year became significantly more challenging than anyone expected.
Yeah. I
mean, nobody expected traffic to drop off a cliff and to stay off that cliff until really just like now. And so these plans that were put into place from these middle line companies, they're just taking longer than I think that anyone anticipated. And Cracker Barrel is a good example here, and Red Robin too. And I really like the progress that Applebee's is making. I know they had a crappy third quarter, but they've got a new prototype coming next year. There's still a lot of reason to be bullish on casual dining in general. Because there's a place where they're injecting, casual dining is injecting itself into the value conversation in a way that is not just discounting for discounting's sake. It's injecting itself into the value proposition of also getting service and hospitality, which Sam, you and I just talked about. That's really important. It's not as transactional. I think there just needs to be a little bit of a retrenchment, and that's what we're kind of going through with the bankruptcy class here. And some of those that are struggling as well, like the O'Charlie's and Ruby Tuesdays and so on and so forth. But I think that I think casual dining is set for a 26 and 27 being strong. Next year will hopefully be a more stabilized year.
Lots of directions to take this. First comment I'll make is at RFDC, I talked to no fewer than 3 CEOs of sports bar concepts, and the optimism in that category is high because of the ability to capitalize on events, whether that's sports events or whether that is live events like concerts and plays and things like that. But also just the fact that you elevate your cuisine for a category that has not always been known for better cuisine. All of these companies are now elevating the cuisine, and that alone, between good bar service, good food, and 85,000 televisions in front of you, lots of opportunity there. So I think that side of the casual category.
Did you talk to Hooters?
Nope, they were not a part of that. They were not one of those. We'll have to talk about that at some point. Maybe we'll save a sports bar conversation for another day. But let's talk about Applebee's next, because talking about the discounting, they have a new value proposition out there, which you want to know how I know this is going to be popular and how much interest there is. It has been by far the number one story at NRN for the last couple of days. And God bless all of you, because holy cow, has it been a popular story. And Alicia, thank you for always writing these stories.
I'm here to serve.
I told her, she said she wanted to run through a wall because of her WFF workshop. And this is how I make her run through walls.
Great, let's channel that.
Yeah, let's go.
Well, Alicia, since you wrote the story, tell us a few more details about Applebee's new value proposition.
A really big meal deal, $9.99. So what was interesting, and it's no secret, I just adore John Payton, the CEO of Dine Brands. I think he's just one of the most measured, thoughtful. When you talk to him, he's not too frenetic or anything. And I like that he basically said in Q3, when Applebee's same-store sales went real south, I think they were negative 5.6 or something. Look, we have to adjust. And it seems like there's some CEOs that are accountable in admitting that they have to adjust, and others that are just not as transparent about that. So I think us journalists prefer, what are you going to do about it? Okay, well, here's what they're going to do about it. Instead of focusing on LTOs and single items like mozzarella sticks or boneless wings, they're going to get into the meal deal game. It's worked for McDonald's, obviously. It's worked for their competitor Chili's with the 3 for Me, with all the meal deals that Chili's has put out, and now they're putting out this really big meal deal with their chicken sandwich and or their burger for $9.99. I think I'm just really enamored by the adjustment. And we saw this at several brands in Q3. Matter of fact, I'm finishing up my Q3 recap story now. That was what stuck out to me. This was our first quarter of this really intense value war across segments. We saw it, the seed plant in Q2, but Q3 was when everybody jumped in, from pizza to casual to QSR and everything in between. And that came with a lot of adjustments. What's working for some brands wasn't working for others, and Applebee's is a good example here. What they were doing wasn't working, so they adjusted, and now they've got their really big meal deal, among other things. They have a Pick 6 Mondays deal as well, and so on and so forth. So all of this has led to sequential improvement in traffic and sales at the end of Q3 and into Q4. Adjustments are necessary. It's okay to admit that you have to make them. And I like the direction that Applebee's is going in. And I think that, again, they're closing their underperforming stores. Sam, you and I had a conversation about that either last week or the week before, how that's a really good strategy at this point. Retrenchment is not bad. Let's focus on four-wall profitability instead of growth for growth's sake. This is the exact environment in which to do that in, when input costs are still high. And so, that's what they're doing. I think next year will be a stable year for them for the first time in a while.
Yeah, I'm curious, Leigh Anne, what you think about value in general right now. Because, Alicia and I spoke earlier about how, what I sense from RFDC, obviously there's a lot of optimism that the industry will grow, will reinvest next year. If we have a model for, though, this climate and what came about from discounting and value, it was the recession, and a lot of brands struggled to get out of that. Leigh Anne, what do you make of the value state of things today? And what should we expect from 2025? Because I just wonder, are they going to get stuck in this constant value messaging?
I think this particular shift at Applebee's is also really reflective of the shift in how consumers are dining out. They're not necessarily just going out for drinks anymore, even if those margaritas are $1. Or if they are going out for $1 margaritas,
Speak for yourself.
Let me finish my sentence, Alicia. If they are going out for $1 margaritas, they're not necessarily adding value by also getting a meal. They're just having their $1 margaritas and then going home to eat there. And so I think what Applebee's is doing is really reflecting that by saying, hey, come in, don't just have a drink, have a meal, have a sandwich, have a soda. And so I think that's a big piece of it. Consumers obviously changed the way they eat in 2020. And then again, a year and a half or so later. And I think this is like another shift in consumer behavior. So what's more interesting to me going into 2025 is, will the consumer habits stick? Or if the economy rights itself, as the economy rights itself, will they go back to their old habits? Will they start going out for drinks and food again? Or will it continue to be one or the other? So I also was really fascinated by this shift for Applebee's. And speaking as a consumer, $9.99 feels like a great deal. I haven't been to an Applebee's in years, but it feels like a great deal for any casual dining brand. So it'll be interesting to see if it sticks, if it has to stick. To your point, Sam, if this messaging sticks around, or if they'll be able to like ease their way out of it at some point in the future.
Well, Applebee's hopes to get the Leigh Annes of the world to say, hey, I haven't gone to Applebee's in a long time. You know what? $9.99? Yeah, let's check that out.
The real problem is it takes a lot to get me to Times Square, which is where Applebee's is near me. So
you have a bigger issue. Alicia and I probably more the target demographic here in our respective suburbs. But yes, I mean, look, at the end of the day, what you want that value meal to do is to get new customers to come check you out and then spend more money, or get existing customers to add more visits into their frequency and come back. Obviously what you don't want is the expectation of value. You don't want people to just expect to come in and get the discounted food and only come for the discounted food. You want it to be a hook that pulls people in to have more behaviors, more drinks added to the order, more food added to the order, obviously. Now, one company that did not do that very well was Red Lobster. Red Lobster said, hey, let's offer this endless shrimp deal because that's going to hook customers and then they'll spend more money. They did not. People came and they just ate as much shrimp as they possibly could. And Red Lobster, Alicia, to your point, one of the bankruptcy class of 2024. By the way, class of 2024, like the worst class of 2024 to be
the biggest.
Bankruptcy class.
The biggest.
So many bankruptcies, including one more this week we haven't even written about, which was Fire Pie. I'm sure that'll go out.
I'm on it.
Making her work, making her earn her pay. But let's talk about Red Lobster, because holy cow, there was just so much negative about Red Lobster, and I've been impressed with how quickly they've been working on turning things around. They hired Damola Adamolican, the former CEO at P.F. Chang's, to come and be CEO at Red Lobster. Damola, 35, young guy, and he did a lot of great things at P.F. Chang's. We've had an opportunity to talk many times. He spoke twice at our Create event. Always been very impressed by what he brings to the table, and he has quickly gotten out there. Not only with changes at Red Lobster, which includes changes to the menu, especially, which we'll talk about, but he's putting himself out there. He was on the Today Show to talk about these new changes to the menu, which I think is important, because you can't just shy away and say, oh, everybody's talking bad about Red Lobster. No, don't. He's taking a very aggressive approach to say, hey, we get it. We filed for bankruptcy. We screwed up with endless shrimp, but we're going to change things. Leigh Anne, do you think this could be the thing to turn Red Lobster around?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I think Damola was like the best hire that this brand could have made. First of all, he's a great guy. We've all met him, I think. He's a charming guy. He's a great guy to put on the Today Show and talk about why you should get back to Red Lobster. Like, absolutely. And I think we're starting to see that he's making really smart choices for this brand already. This menu revamp, people are only talking about the menu revamp, but I believe that this is now a smaller menu. So it's also a very smart menu revamp, because they brought back a lot of things that customers love. Hush puppies, popcorn shrimp. And so they're really, really playing that up, but they also quietly took some other things off the menu, which, as we all know, is a great way to save money, to save labor, to make your employees happy. So I think I'm eager to see what else he does. He's been very aggressively filling out his C-suite. I think they named 4 or 5 executives over the last month, which is great. It's great to see him making moves. It's great to see people in the industry not shying away from a job at Red Lobster, because I think a few months ago we were all like, who would work there? So that's been nice to see. I do feel a sense of genuine optimism and excitement about the Red Lobster brand right now.
You agree, Alicia?
Seems like more people want to work there now that the PE firm has gotten itself out of the business.
Sure.
I wonder if that's
funny how that works
coincidence. Yeah. I'm always optimistic.
You are. Credit to you.
This is a much less interesting conversation when Alicia and I feel the same way.
But Leigh Anne's point is incredibly spot on. It's the hush puppies, the popcorn shrimp, the cult favorites, if you will, the things that made Red Lobster Red Lobster. And it's a 20% smaller menu, but there's 9 new items. It's a perfect balance. So I don't see a downside to this. They've got to get that brand reputation back up to snuff to match that exciting menu work that they're doing. And to both of your point, now that they've filled out their C-suite, including a new chief marketing officer, I think that'll probably be one of their big priorities in the new year.
Will be exciting to watch. Hopefully these full service brands do have have lots of, strong tailwind going into 2025. So hopefully there's some good things to report about next year. Okay, finally, a lightning round. Earlier in our conversation, Leigh Anne, I was telling Alicia about how much I hated Las Vegas, which I also shared with the rest of our team. I keep talking about it. I can't stop talking about it. I'm so sorry. But our lightning round related to that. What's your favorite city for food in America? Cannot be the one you live in.
God damn it.
Leigh Anne.
You knew my favorite city in America for food?
You can't say New York.
What else is there?
Oh, come on. I know what you're going to say.
No, I do. I travel a lot. Can it be a city I used to live in? That's probably cheating too. Because part of me wants to say Chicago, but I feel like that's an answer a lot of people say. So I'll say that the Phoenix, Scottsdale area is an extremely underrated area for food. They've got great food out there. Some really great emerging restaurant groups doing good work out there. So yes, I always eat well when I'm in Arizona, which, as you both know, I'm in Arizona a lot. So
that's a good pick. Alicia, what's yours? You can say New York if you'd like.
I actually like I don't like Vegas proper either, unless I'm at a concert. But the food is, I'll still go to Vegas and trollop through the stinky, smoky casinos.
That must be
for the food.
Be impressive food scene if that gets you to go to Vegas for food.
I also, you can't say your hometown, but I think Louisville is also underrated for food. So I'm gonna cheat and say my hometown as well.
Sure. Hey, plug for my own here in Columbus, also underrated. I think every city in America's got a good story to tell. It's mostly underrated for a lot of cities, except for Vegas. I'm just kidding. Vegas, look, my problem with Vegas, I need to get out of these casinos because that's where it just drags me down.
Sam, Vegas is a city for lying by the pool and going to shows.
Yes, and I did not do either of those things. So that's the Vegas experience I need to have. I will say my answer is my former home, Durham, North Carolina. I dearly love that city. I got to watch that food scene come over the course of 13 years that I lived there. You got to love when Southern food comes together with fine dining, and it's just there's so much cool things happening there. My close runner-up is Asheville. Just, I don't know.
Asheville's
go to North
good.
Carolina
Yeah.
and eat in North Carolina. Yeah. It's amazing. Okay, I am now going to roll into a conversation that our colleague, senior food and beverage editor Bret Thorn, had with the chief culinary officer. I was going to say director of culinary, but chief culinary officer at Crisp & Green, Bill Fairbanks. Alicia.
If I may,
Yes.
sorry, I believe before we go to that interview, you were going to hear a brief interview conversation that I had with the head chef at Bel Gioioso Cheese.
Thank you. Yes, of course I was going to say that too. Wow, Leigh Anne, you cut me
You
off.
absolutely were. So we had a great conversation about all the ways that you can use cheese on your menu. And then Bret also had an incredible conversation with Bill Fairbanks. And
Perfect.
you get to hear both.
This episode is chock full. Leigh Anne and Alicia, thank you as always.
Thanks for having.
Thank you.
I am sitting down today with Steve Stapleton, the head chef at Belgioioso Cheese. Steve, thank you for joining me today.
Oh, thank you for your time.
So we are here just to talk a little bit about cheese and all of the latest and trendiest ways that restaurant operators can use it on their menus. So my first question is, according to data from Technomic, which is our sister data company, the fastest growing area of cheese usage is actually in a buffet format. Can you talk a bit about how cheese can be a valuable or additive element in this specific restaurant format?
Sure. So there's obviously several benefits of utilizing cheese in the buffet format. You know, most times, obviously, you'll see chefs utilizing it in salads to really kind of just spruce up the overall flavor and look of the item. The other way too is if you're talking about obviously in hot applications, a lot of times just finishing off a simple dish with cheese, it does a couple of things. Obviously, we get the look, but it actually helps with the hold of the product itself. It kind of helps seal in some of the moisture, and a lot of times too, especially now when we're looking at ways of trying to cut costs and save money. A lot of times what we're seeing is people are actually trending down on the quality of different proteins they're using, and kind of really looking for that cheese to kind of pull through the flavor to help kind of round off the entree, so to speak. I know even whenever I was back in the country club settings, anytime you would do any type of pasta dishes or anything like that, again, topping it with Parmesan or Asiago, things like that. Again, it kind of helps just lock in that moisture and gives you a better hold time for your buffet.
Sure. Another area where cheese is playing a vital role right now is in side dishes. How are you seeing cheese being included as a value add and an elevator in side dishes?
Yeah. So the crazy one still right now is if you look at mac and cheese, right? I mean, almost anywhere you go now has some type of mac and cheese. And really what we're starting to see trend wise is just like everywhere else, labor is still continuing to be an issue. So what can that end user do? Whether it's buying a pre-made mac and cheese and finishing it off with some higher quality cheeses to kind of help again bring that flavor through, or whether it's a matter of melting in some of these different cheeses, like we're starting to see really a whole lot of Italico, which is basically like our version of a domestic Taleggio that kind of brings some of those earthier notes in. We're starting to see things like pepperoncino, which is basically a cheese that has a blend of Calabrian red pepper chili flakes and Asiago, but ways that these restaurants kind of customize and make things their own. And a lot of times it's just a matter of just adding an ingredient or two, and kind of setting them aside from some of their competitors. What we're really, I mean, if you look even at the fast food segment now, almost everybody has some type of mac and cheese. But I guess it really just depends on the overall goal. But the majority of the customers that we do see, that's really what they're looking for, is they are looking for speed scratch and being able to just top it off and finish it with a good quality cheese to kind of help bring those flavors through and not put too much burden on the kitchen.
Yeah, and speaking of, value, another way that restaurants are offering value right now is by bundling different offerings to convey an idea of value as prices are rising. How can cheese specifically play a role in the value game right now?
Sure. Well, and like even if you look at, I mean, everybody's got some type of, the chicken sandwich war is still very much going on, right? So a lot of times you're able to put, a different cheese like a Fontina, obviously fresh mozzarella still comes in very strong. The other thing we're starting to see too is stracciatella, the burrata filling. We're starting to see that utilized in different ways. Again, one good thing about all those cheeses in general, a little goes a long way. And just like anywhere, I mean, think about anytime you even go through a fast drive-through, you know, what's typically sells more, just traditional cheeseburger or traditional burger or a cheeseburger. So you get that perceived value, if you will. I think it's really well, the biggest thing too is we're starting to see just different types of cheeses. The general American palate, has become much more sophisticated. The popularity of even charcuterie, during COVID actually uh, opened people's eyes to a lot more um, different types of cheeses. So again, when you're talking about the bundle thing, a lot of people are getting unique in the way that they're offering that, whether it is in a charcuterie type setting or it is an addition to a burger or chicken sandwich. Um, Again, I still think it kind of also lends back to you're able to add more flavor with really not a whole lot more labor going into that.
Definitely. Well, thank you, Chef, for your time today and for sitting down to share these tips and resources with our listeners today.
Yes, ma'am. Happy to do it.
Hello, Bill Fairbanks, Chief Culinary Officer of Steel Brands, which owns Crisp and Green, among other things. How you doing?
Doing great today. Thanks for having me.
So, for those of us in the world who do not know very much about Crisp and Green, why don't you tell everyone about the concept?
So Crisp and Green is a healthy, fast casual dining destination, and we provide nutritious meals that embrace a modern wellness lifestyle. What truly sets us apart is our unwavering commitment to quality and flavor. Our menu features chef-crafted dishes made from seasonal, fresh ingredients that allow us to create interesting flavor profiles that cater to a wide audience.
And that chef created stuff that's created by you and your team, right?
It is created by me and the talented chefs on my culinary team.
And how long have you been with Steel Brands?
Since 2016, when we first started thinking about the idea of Crisp and Green and what it could be.
So, but there are other restaurant brands in Steel Brands, right?
Yes, we do have one other brand today, Pura Lima, that is also under the Steel Brands umbrella.
Pura Lima, what is that?
It is a fast casual Latin concept that has grain bowls and tacos, as well as burritos.
Cool. And Crisp and Green also has grain bowls, but wraps and salads and like that, right?
Correct. Salads, grain bowls, wraps. We also have smoothies as well as acai bowls.
Oh, so you cover the gamut of the health realm, sort of.
Yes. We try and have something for everybody.
Well, that's great. And there are many chains with menus sort of like that, although I guess doing salad and acai bowls together is not particularly usual. But what do you think separates Crisp and Green from all the other salad chains?
I would say, unlike other salad chains, we don't just serve salads. We focus on innovative, made-to-order options that nourish the whole person and elevate the dining experience.
And how did you end up hooking up with Steel Brands?
Back in 2016, Steel had approached myself and a couple other individuals about the idea of Crisp and Green. And really from day one, it sounded like such an amazing idea and opportunity that I just, couldn't resist but want to jump on board.
That's cool. And what were you doing beforehand?
I had been a chef of a local restaurant group running several concepts for them. And this was just a great opportunity to kind of segue from that business into the healthy, fast casual salad and wellness business.
And so that local group, that was also in Minnesota?
It was Minnesota based, yes.
Oh, okay. And what's your chef training background? Did you like work your way up, go through culinary school? What's your deal?
I did a little bit of everything. My culinary journey started at a young age. Even really as a kid, I spent a lot of time watching PBS and watching Julia Childs and Martin Yan. And I think it was, seeing chefs like that really inspired me to get involved with food, which I did when I had my first opportunity to get a job. That's where I went, was to restaurants. And as I became more serious about becoming a chef, I went to culinary school at a Le Cordon Bleu affiliate in the United States. And I trained there, which gave me a great foundation with classic culinary techniques. And I also was able to gain some training at the Hotel du Palais in Biarritz, France, being placed after culinary school, which from there I went back to, fine dining restaurants locally here in the Minnesota, Minneapolis-St. Paul market.
Cool. So what was the appeal? You always interested in cooking. You did the traditional culinary school, fine dining kind of route. Why did you decide then to go in the direction of fast casual?
So after being in fine dining for a while, I had an opportunity to open a high concept bar in Minneapolis and kind of take some of the techniques with food that I had used throughout my career and apply those in a setting that was a little bit more casual, still, full service restaurant and still culinary techniques that you would use in fine dining, and start to hone how those could be repeated across multiple locations. And, after that, given the opportunity to join Crisp and Green and really take what I had learned from that diverse experience that I was privileged enough to have from fine dining and high concept bars, I kind of couldn't resist that opportunity to join Crisp and Green, which really has allowed me to balance creativity with nutritional integrity, something that you don't always necessarily get in all different restaurant styles.
Cool. So these high concept bars, they were like kind of gastropub kind of things with like fancy cocktails and chefy food and like that?
Yes, tequila bars that had elevated Mexican cuisine, where you wouldn't necessarily expect the food to be of the quality that it was.
That's cool. And so then you joined Crisp and Green, Steel Brands. Why you seem interested in the nutritional aspects of the food there? How come that is of interest to you?
Well, I think it's something that over time in life became very important to me. Something that I personally have always strived to be better at, and really being able to balance that creativity with nutritional integrity helped me in my own life kind of improve that journey that I was on. And then being able to, take that approach and create more nutritional, healthy food while using flavors and techniques that I'd learned in the past was really intriguing to me. It really was like a new challenge, which as a chef, that's really what I believe you're always looking for. You're a constant student of the culinary arts, and you're always looking for new avenues where you can apply what you've learned in the past to new creations.
And taking your chef skills to make things taste good and sort of create the boundaries of making it also good for you is probably a pretty fun challenge. Is that sort of what you do and what you like about it?
It is part of what I like about it. We at Crisp and Green, we always cook from whole foods, right? We're creating our dressings, our recipes, our vegetables are prepped in-house daily. So when you start with whole foods, and that's kind of like the basis of what your menu is, it kind of naturally happens that a lot of things you do will end up being more traditional and health focused than if you had a different approach than that.
Sure. Yes, whole foods, vegetables and fruits and like that are good for you naturally. So it makes sense. I mean, how do you start when you're developing menu items? Do you have like a goal of nutritional profile as well as how it tastes, or what's the process for that?
Well, we always try and start with ingredients that will help with that nutritional profile. So knowing that we're starting with those whole vegetables, fruits, grains, it's a great starting point. And we really focus on seasonal ingredients as well as current culinary trends. And I collaborate really closely with my talented team of chefs. Through that process, there's brainstorming where we come up with innovative ideas and flavor combinations. And then from there, we really go through a process at creating these dishes to make them time and time again to make sure that they're both replicatable at scale and that they're the most flavorful they can be.
So, yeah, this is a complaint people have about food that's good for them, which is that it doesn't taste that great. But like, if you're a chef, you know how to overcome that. So do you have strategies for making sure that whatever you're offering is delicious? So the question of making sure there's a good combination of flavors, or what do you do?
I think it's a balance of different flavors. Food that has a right balance in acidity and aromatics. It's not just the way you season a food, but the different flavors that you combine that really create cravings in people, I believe.
Makes sense. And are you all of the Crisp and Greens company owned, or are they franchised, or is it a combination?
We're a combination of both, but many of our stores are franchise locations.
And so, do the franchisees give any input in terms of menu development or execution or anything like that?
Typically, the culinary development does come from our team. We do, communicate and work with our partners as we launch new menu items. But through that process, there isn't a lot of creating that's coming from that side. They're just incredible partners at executing what my team creates and making it come to life every day in our restaurants.
Cool. So you get buy-in from them. They're on board with the new menu items that you're introducing.
Yes, they're always a candid audience, and they are, like I've mentioned, are just incredible partners in really making the magic happen on a daily basis.
Yeah, candor is important when you're working with different stakeholders in a business. You've got to make sure, especially with like salads and wraps and stuff, that any kind of new thing that you add doesn't come up the works or anything like that, right?
Yes, and really one of the things that my culinary team works through is kind of the process and the scalability and how we train and execute this to team members that have all different varying levels of experience working in restaurants, which is really critical to the success of the menu items, to make sure that we can make what my team can make in a store happen halfway across the country and be a very similar product.
So how long does it take from like when you've developed a new menu item to get it implemented at all close to 50 locations of Crisp and Green?
It's usually a 3 to 6 month process, depending upon the scale of the menu change or update. For example, this fall menu that we're launching in October, which is an extensive menu update for us, likely the most extensive we've had to date. That was about a 6 month process to have that come to life in order to really develop those processes and then create all the materials that our teams and partners within Steel Brands and Crisp and Green have, rolling out training materials and helping support the initiative.
Cool. And yeah, thank you for bringing up the new menu, because I was about to ask you about that. Can you? What are some of the big changes that you're making with the menu?
So this October, we're launching 2 new wraps, which support a program that we launched earlier in June. Wraps were something that was new to Crisp and Green in June of this year. We're adding a buffalo and blue wrap, as well as a Japanese barbecue wrap. And in addition to those 2 items, we're bringing back 2 beloved seasonal fan favorites, the Wild Child Grain Bowl and the Squash Gold Salad.
So talk me through each of those new items and the returning ones. What's in each of them?
So the buffalo and blue wrap has both of our wraps start with romaine hearts, and we have buffalo chicken, have blue cheese, roasted tomatoes, cucumber, carrot, and buffalo breadcrumbs. And then we tie that all together with Crisp and Green's ranch dressing.
So what is a buffalo breadcrumb? Is that like breadcrumbs with buffalo seasoning in them, or what?
It is. So through the process of developing this dish, we were at the point where we felt we needed just one more thing in this wrap to really bring through the buffalo flavor. And when I think of buffalo chicken, there's several flavors outside of just the chicken and a tangy buffalo sauce. It's also that flavor that typically you would get from, fried chicken, where you get a caramelized flavor from the chicken itself. And what we wanted to do was take a healthy approach by baking breadcrumbs in extra virgin olive oil with some buffalo seasoning to try and emulate that flavor profile and really tie the buffalo and blue wrap together.
And how is the chicken itself cooked?
The chicken itself is marinated and then roasted in our oven with a buffalo sauce.
So no frying. You probably don't have fryers in your restaurants, do you?
We don't have any fryers in our restaurants at all.
Great. And what's the other wrap?
We have a Japanese barbecue wrap that has roasted chicken, avocado, Napa cabbage, carrots, sesame seeds, wonton strips, and a Japanese barbecue sauce.
So what is a Japanese barbecue sauce like? Is that like an enhanced teriyaki or what?
It has some similar flavors to teriyaki, typically based off of a tamari sauce with mirin. Usually there's an onion and garlic element to it. So you kind of have a bold, sweet flavor. It's very traditional.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, buffalo chicken obviously is everywhere. But I don't know that I've heard of Japanese barbecue at a chain restaurant before. How did you come upon that flavor and that name? Because obviously how you name something is really important in terms of how it's sold.
Yeah, so we looked at the wrap program that we launched back in June and really looking for a flavor that we felt would be additive to it was something in that vein of a world barbecue. We didn't really have a sweet and savory wrap in the lineup, which we thought would be a great add. And working through several different flavor combinations, we really landed on the Japanese barbecue being the best fit for our Crisp and Green menu.
Well, that's neat. And how did you come across Japanese barbecue? Did you have like manufacturers who suggested this for you, or what was your approach to coming across that?
We didn't initially. It was something that we worked out with our team, and we were initially only using a house-made teriyaki dressing that we have in another menu item in-house in the wrap. And in order to create a bit bolder flavor, we added the Japanese barbecue sauce to the process. And it was something that initially we we were making as a team in-house and the amount of ingredients that it takes to make the Japanese barbecue sauce, we looked to a manufacturer that we could partner with, Bachan's, and we brought in their barbecue sauce to use on the Japanese barbecue wrap. And they make an incredible, bold, traditional barbecue sauce. It's a family recipe, really, that as much as we pride ourselves on making all our own ingredients in-house, this product is so phenomenal. It was natural to look to partnering with them.
Yeah, it makes sense, and it certainly makes it operationally more easy. And if they're fitting your specs, then you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Somebody else is already doing it.
Yes.
And Japanese barbecue is sort of an interesting idea because it's people like barbecue, but they want something a little bit different, but not too scary. And Japanese probably fits that rubric, as it were.
Yeah, it's a great fit and something that I believe speaks to a really wide audience, which is another reason why it seemed appropriate that was the direction we went with this wrap.
Makes sense. And so what are the two items that you're bringing back?
So we're bringing back our Wild Child Grain Bowl, which we've had for several seasons, and it's a play on classic fall flavors. It's wild rice with roasted Brussels sprouts, dried cranberries, goat cheese, and then balsamic vinaigrette. And the other item is our squash gold salad, which has always been one of my favorites. It has one of the first dressings that we'd ever developed for Crisp and Green, an apple, cider, and pumpkin seed dressing. And the salad consists of maple roasted butternut squash, candied pecans, apples, white cheddar, and quinoa. So really, to me, it's a study in comforting fall flavors.
Sounds great. And the Wild Child seems to me really reflects Minnesota, because when I think wild rice, I think Minnesota. I don't think many. It's not a huge menu item in most or ingredient in most of the rest of the country, but it's big in Minnesota.
Yeah, it's certainly predominant in northern Minnesota, and I think you see it a little bit more around the country these days, as it's perceived as a pretty healthy grain, and it definitely adds a lot of flavor to the dish, which is one of the reasons we gravitate towards it. It's kind of that nuttiness that you don't really get from another grain. Yeah.
I get hungry when I think of wild rice, because I think it's just a delicious food, and also relatively nutritious, plenty of fiber, all of those things. So what can we expect from you guys after this fall launch?
Well, we're incredibly excited for what lies ahead. In the coming year, I believe you find more of the same with seasonal menu expansions that showcase seasonal fresh ingredients. We're always exploring new flavor combinations that are health focused, so that we can meet the needs of our evolving guests. And I would venture to say that 2025 will likely be one of our most innovative years that we've had as a brand as Crisp and Green.
That's cool. And what did you say Steel Brand's other concept was?
Pura Lima is our other concept.
Pura Lima, and that is Hispanic. How many locations of that are there?
We have 3 locations in the Minneapolis and St. Paul area. The first opened in July of 2023.
Oh, so quite new.
Very new concept for us.
That's fine. And what are the plans for Pura Lima?
Pura Lima is a new brand. We're just incredibly excited about it and what it has in store for us. Much like Crisp and Green back in 2016, it's amazing to see a new brand grow and expand into new locations. And with that, you have evolution of menu, evolution of an outstanding hospitality experience that's already in place. And we're just incredibly excited to see that brand grow as well.
Is it exciting to return to your sort of Hispanic cooking roots from those tequila bars?
It's very exciting for me. I would say, early in my culinary journey, long before I went to culinary school, food from Mexico and South America was some of what intrigued me the most. And I moved away from that several years, diving into European cuisines, be it from France or Spain or the Mediterranean. And this is an opportunity to get back to something that I've always held very dear to my heart, both the cuisine and the cultures of those countries. Just amazing opportunities in what we can do with that brand.
That's awesome. I'm looking forward to finding out more about that also. But for now, you've answered all of my questions, Bill Fairbanks, and it's really nice to meet you.
It was outstanding to meet you as well. Thank you so much for your time today and having me.
Oh, and thank you for yours.
Belgioioso Cheese is a family-owned and operated company specializing in artisan Italian cheesemaking. Using only natural ingredients and fresh local Wisconsin milk, master cheesemakers handcraft the full line of exceptional cheeses, guided by a commitment to quality and a respect for tradition. Ask your distributor about Belgioioso's award-winning fresh mozzarella, burrata, ricotta, mascarpone, American Grana, and Parmesan. At Belgioioso, every cheese is a specialty.